Okay, so welcome back to the Martin Sibley Show. We're doing an LA to UK episode today, and Keely returning in some respects because we did the live stream. We were saying it's got to be around 3 years or so ago, 2, 3 years ago, and just going to have a nice catch up on all things inclusion and media and marketing. So great to see you again, Keely.
Thank you so much. Likewise, I can't wait.
And how's everything been? I know there's a lot going on in the world and in your life, but generally things all right?
Yeah, things have been good on a whole, I
Busy?
think. Very, very busy, constantly trying to make sure I have enough spoons to do everything.
Yeah.
But it's always fun, I think, isn't it, as a disabled person, balancing everything we want to achieve in life, but then also navigating the world and our health.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I always love it when you and I have caught up, and I think it's because there's so many areas we've got that similar passion. There's obviously the disability inclusion side that a lot of others share. There's the entrepreneurship side that more and more people, I think, share. And when you're sort of speaking about spoons and health considerations, like being a founder entrepreneur doesn't always match so easily with that sentiment. So we'll get stuck into a bit of that, I'm sure. But yeah, also the marketing and media space. So there's a lot of areas of common interest that I think we always enjoy just catching up and sharing all the trials and tribulations on. So when we last caught up, you were, I don't remember exactly at what point with Sea Talent, but it was certainly off the ground and going well and managing lots of talent. And I think you had quite a few people in the team then. So yeah, just fill us in a bit, sort of what kind of happened at Sea Talent, how it was going. And I know there's obviously a few bits of news on the way, but just be great to hear in your own words kind of how it all played out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So when I first started Sea Talent, and it's kind of a weird thing when people say, well, when did you start Sea Talent, start the company? I'm like, I actually don't know. I kind of unofficially started representing talent just from all of my experience and the frustration with the industry. And then I think more officially started calling it Sea Talent, and it really forming itself as an entity was around maybe 18, 19. And then I think, yeah, when we spoke around 3 years ago, we were kind of moving away from representing disabled actors and writers and directors and expanding into social media creators because of the pandemic and everything that we saw. And also what we saw around, how disabled creators were really changing and shifting and controlling the narrative on social media, like we hadn't really seen before with film and TV. I think something that we saw consistently was, even though we were getting more disabled actors roles within Hollywood and within shows and movies, they were still playing characters that were tropes and reinforced stereotypes, and we didn't have too much control. We could advocate and do everything we could as managers to shift that narrative, but at the end of the day, it was down to those big directors and producers to really make those decisions. So it was really awesome around that time expanding into social media and exploring how it can have a much greater and bigger benefit. Certainly at that time in the world, and at that time, kind of even politically, on the change it could make. So I think that's where we were.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it, that obviously when I look back at the kind of decade up to that 2019, 2020, I think I started blogging in about 2009. And for a long while, it was basically a way that we as disabled people had a voice, and it wasn't so much around business or industry. It was kind of political, but just literally to be able to say, these are the barriers we face, this is the ableism we face, and just having a platform to share our stories. And so I guess by its nature, it was a lot more activisty and social change, and it still very much has a lot of that, quite rightly as well. But it's almost around the point when I started Purple Goat, you started Sea Talent, and other people were up to similar but different things. It was, we finally got the chance to get more into certain industries. So to look at influence in media and marketing in particular for us. And then as you sort of come up with that theoretical, we're going to go in and we're going to change it, but then you learn about the forces going on in those industries. And I don't know about you, but for me, that was really interesting about how those industries just work and what the business case is, and like how did you find navigating some of that once, you know, once shit got real, so to speak?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think when I first moved to LA, I started going to lots of events, networking events, just trying to also just meet other disabled people within this industry. And I also didn't realize I didn't really realize the landscape of the work that had been done by disability advocates and disabled people within Hollywood. But people have been fighting for accurate and authentic representation and equitable access and everything that we want within this industry for decades.
Yeah.
And it is incredible how far they have allowed us to come, but also how much work that still needed to be done.
Yeah.
But I think that was like the first window, and recognizing, okay, this is not going to be easy. This is not going to happen overnight. And then building a viable business, because that was the other very intentional decision that I had. Was I didn't want to start a charity. I didn't want to start a nonprofit. I really wanted this to be a business. I wanted to make sure that disabled people could get money, get paid.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing that we were seeing within Hollywood. I think even if we look back to all the way back to the Wizard of Oz, and how the disabled people were paid less than Toto the dog within that movie.
Wow.
And the same thing was still really happening. Disabled people were still being paid so much less than non-disabled people within the industry. So not only wanting to shift that side of Hollywood, but also make sure that we could really prove ourselves as people and artists and professionals that could make a living from this business.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We talked before we hit record about the standing on the shoulders of giant sentiment. And I think that's very apt to what you've just said there, the advocates and activists. It was decades of laying the groundwork, and maybe partly with the advent of social media and maybe just societal sensitivity to DEI topics as well. I think everything just seemed to converge where we were suddenly able to have these conversations with those directors and screenwriters and, you know, chief marketing officers, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so as you sort of got to like 2019, 2020, you're networking, and I guess you're looking at both sides of the coin, right? You're trying to find those that would want to work with disabled talent and try to find disabled talent that you could represent. I mean, I can imagine you were very busy. How did you find it in that earlier part when you were on your own? And how did you then manage to scale up that you had other people that could help you on your journey as well?
Yeah, you know, I think it definitely started by representing one or two amazing disabled actors and disabled talent. And then I think really word of mouth, which obviously isn't the best way to run a business, but in the beginning,
Well, yeah, it's still very powerful today, I think, despite all this AI, social media, tech stuff. I think word of mouth / brand is still very powerful.
Love that. It's
Yeah.
true. It's true.
Yeah.
So that was definitely the most impactful thing at the beginning. I think the way that we represented talent was very different to traditional agencies and management companies. We would fight for our talent to be seen for roles that weren't just disability specific. We would fight to change scripts. We would fight for all of these different things that maybe a non-disabled or kind of traditional management and agency wouldn't have thought about or wouldn't have done. And also obviously making sure that any set or any audition that our talent is going to is actually accessible, that they could focus on their job rather than having to advocate for themselves throughout that audition or on set. So as soon as I think we started to do that, everyone just started telling their friends, and that's really how our roster grew. And then we got more intentional about finding talent and scouting talent that we loved and were so passionate about. And when we got new managers on board, we always say, you know, you have to be able to know and identify at least 3 opportunities that you are going to fight for that talent to be involved in before representing them. We didn't just want to represent anyone just because someone was disabled and wanting to go into acting. That would not mean that we were going to represent them. Like, they had to be extremely talented, they had to be extremely passionate, because we really wanted to create stars that just so happened to be disabled.
And that's always the difficult, not, yeah, I guess it is difficult, but an interesting balance as well, right? That there's that inclusion narrative that is a sort of social change narrative, and absolutely without any tokenism or anything like that, it's still that regardless of those DEI conversations, that we're all doing the thing in society because we're awesome at it and we're the best at it. And it's almost this thing about paradoxes and contradictory, so that others might see as contradictory. You can hold both. You can talk about removing barriers and the fact that that enables people to be the best superstars regardless of any DEI identity as well.
Yes, I love that you said that. And I think, you know, personally, as an advocate, I will always fight for space for everyone, for all disabled people, for justice, for accessibility, for equity, for equitable pay, always for all disabled people. Every single disabled life matters. But when it comes to business, we want to be a viable business that makes money. So we are going to be very specific, and with who we represent, and as you say, you know, not being tokenistic about it, truly being very intentional around the path that we create.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I think societally, we've all been looking at that narrative of, you know, do businesses have more responsibility to be a positive impact society, or are businesses set up to make profit end of? And I'm talking large businesses, not just businesses you and I set up. I think globally we're having these conversations about the sort of where social impact and where business sort of have responsibility or should stay in their lane and all that kind of stuff. So have you ever found, and I'm talking to broad examples, not specific, just generally, where the two are harder to marry up, where you've got your advocacy hat and you've got your entrepreneurial business hat? And have you ever found that there's times that's hard to marry?
Oh, definitely. I think it's something that is a challenge quite regularly. I think even the thought that we have to consistently within business legitimize being disabled, not disabled identity, and just disabled people in general as people and a community to invest in by the sheer number of us and the economic value that we hold. And I hate that. I hate that we have to continually talk about the business case. I find that incredibly frustrating as an advocate, because I'm like, disabled people are just, you should care, because we're people at the end of the day.
Like human rights, not business rights, but
exactly,
we know that's the way to get in the door and make the right change.
Yes. So I think that's one of the biggest examples, and I hope that that will eventually change. But I do also think right now that is a way that we get ourselves in the door and we do get listened to.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, I mean, there's probably 2 parts of the Sea Talent story to touch on before we move into what you're up to now, which is very, very exciting. You can choose which one we go first, but one was that sentiment of health and spoons and the sort of, I guess, the work-life balance and those sentiments. So I'd be interested to hear how it was navigating a growing business. And ultimately you exited to Whalar, and just to hear a little bit about what kind of happened and the reasons around that as well. So you take which one you prefer first.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with the exit. I think, you know, we got to a point where we were growing so much and quicker than we expected. And as someone personally who never even thought I would start a business, let alone sell a business,
So you hadn't set up to be entrepreneurial like as a future intention, no?
Oh no, definitely not. That
That's
was not,
interesting. Yeah,
that was definitely not, yeah, I didn't think
yeah.
that was
Your
gonna be
face
on
like
the
no
card.
way.
No way. I wanted to be a dancer, and that was, yeah, this was not the plan. But here we are.
Yeah.
Um, and we were working with Whaler on various different campaigns. And at the time, I was just thinking about what are the next steps for this business, for the talent that we represent, for our managers. I just felt like there was so much more that we could do, but as you know, probably better than most, funding becomes an issue when you do start to scale and grow.
Yeah.
Like I need capital to expand and now hit the next milestones. And or I need just some additional resource, whatever that may be. So I was just really thinking about what I was going to do next. And this amazing opportunity came about where Whaler kind of approached us and mentioned acquisition, and we looked into it and spent a long time kind of figuring out if this was the right decision to make. And then we thought about our goals and our intentions, and one of our biggest goals was mainstreaming disability, getting disabled people on the biggest platforms possible, getting more money in the hands of our creators and our talent. And it seemed to line up perfectly with everything that we could achieve with Whaler. So we ended up saying yes and going into partnership, and it did lead to some truly amazing things. And I'm really proud and happy of kind of where talent is right now and what they've been able to achieve under the Whaler umbrella.
Yeah, that's so cool. They say it's that mainstream, that word you use, mainstream. And by the way, huge congratulations on it, because those like I probably had, you know, I used to read a lot of entrepreneur biographies, and sort of I always had that business streak in me, and so becoming entrepreneurial, but very much driven by the disability inclusion purpose and mission has been, you know, just such a cool journey. And yeah, any entrepreneur knows to be able to scale a business and have an exit, it's like the textbook scenario of a perfectly run business. So yeah, absolute kudos for achieving all that. And also your point on the more social mission side, that mainstreaming, it's kind of because generally as disabled people, we've been excluded by those barriers we all know about in all the different ways. It's sort of to build a business that only has disability. Without that, nothing would get better. But with it, you don't want to build a silo or like a kind of ghetto of disabled people. So there is a sort of other benefit of that mainstreaming and bringing it to whichever industry we're talking about. So yeah, it sounds perfect that you could do such a thing with Whaler.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and I think to the other kind of point too, and the other question of how to do it as a disabled founder. And I mean, I would love to hear your experiences with this and your journey with this, because I think I found it really tough, honestly. I think especially seeing how prevalent hustle culture is just within this world and the entrepreneurial world. And also just thinking about how inaccessible events, networking events and conferences are. And I was just at CES last week and just needed to sit down. I needed a seat. And it was an extra $150 to get a seat at our booth.
Wow.
I'm like, I just need to sit.
Yeah.
It's like the small things from just when you're at conferences to being like, can I fully participate? I don't know. To then just falling into hustle culture generally and making yourself so unwell that you have to just pause for a moment. So yeah, it's tough finding the balance and haven't figured it out or got the answers just yet.
Yeah, and I think from a disabled founder perspective, for me, what I ended up doing was not the right, like I burned out, I ended up needing a bit of time out the business, and thankfully it was at a point that the senior management team that had already been built up could carry things forward while I took a bit of time to recover. And so all's well that ends well, I'm much back to my normal energy and all that kind of stuff. But as a theoretical textbook, I just did everything not the correct way kind of thing. But I also think if you speak to entrepreneurs and founders that aren't disabled, you hear pretty much a similar story. So there's an added element with a disability. Obviously, we've all got different conditions and considerations, but you know, in the end, it's the self-awareness of what our limits are, and sort of as much as we live and breathe that business, particularly in that startup phase, because it's all on us to get it off the ground. Yeah, there has to still be that my health is worth more than any business or any other thing, but I probably didn't have that view as much as I could have or should have, but definitely learned lessons along the way.
Yeah, exactly the same. And you are right, building that team, and that team that also understands what you need and when you need it, and you can be transparent and open and honest with too, I think is very helpful.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, you do hear business leaders and founders that have grown teams, scaled teams, always speaking about it's the people around you. It's you bring in talent, you get out of their way. You know, all those tropes, and let's use that media where those sort of tropes. But that is so true, and I think, you know, it kind of took me burning out a bit because I was just struggling to let go. If I'm honest, like I struggled to delegate and trust others because it was my baby. So I think I was forced to do that, but in being forced to do that, I now see that, yeah, it's all about finding good people and getting out of their way, but being there to empower and support. And so I mean that when I say it, whereas 5-10 years ago I might have said it, but slightly parroting a biography I've read, you know.
Oh yeah, I really relate. Oh man, letting go. Oh,
Yeah,
it's so hard. So hard.
absolutely. Cool. So, I mean, if there's anything else you want to share on those 2 points, you know, go for it. And then I suppose also moving us forward a bit more. So I know at the moment you've got a newer venture. So it'd be great, yeah, to kind of hear what happened from Whaler to what you're doing now, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So I left Whaler and Sea Talent in May 2023, and then very quickly
Oh,
went
that's
on to,
not far off a year already, right?
I know, it's
I
so,
remember it happening. I just like, where did that time go? Yeah.
oh, and I was there since it was a year since the acquisition too, so it's
Yeah.
so wild. Time is just so weird. Um, so yeah, left in May 2023 and then didn't take a break. I just got going straight away with what I wanted to build next. And in my mind for a while, I'd been thinking about tech and how technology can really accelerate change for disabled people, and also how technology and software solutions can be a way where we can sell into large businesses and really become a solution that sticks rather than a solution that would get deprioritized as soon as budgets get cut. And that was really my mindset going into this new business, was creating something that made systemic change that as I say, really just stuck. So I built a platform, and obviously still relatively new and kind of evolving and shifting and changing, but at the heart of it, we are a talent acquisition and learning experience platform for companies to train and access disabled and underrepresented talent pools. So at the heart of it, we really just make recruitment, retention, and turnover less of a burden on companies and make it an easier system. But whilst really focusing on getting disabled people into long-term, meaningful employment opportunities and building careers versus just jobs. And then on the other side, staying within media and entertainment, really focusing on shifting that narrative and telling the untold stories of disabled people. So I partnered with Sophie Morgan, which has just been a dream come true, someone that I just looked up to forever and thought was just incredible. So getting to work with her on this and build this with her has been incredible. And on that media side, we did a deal with Hello Sunshine, which is Reese Witherspoons' company. So yeah, building these 2 things in tandem, which really complement each other as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. And some epic names that you've been working with, like you say, Sophie and Reese as well. And again, congratulations on the latest venture and all the progress and success since last May. And I guess one thing to clarify, partly for me and partly for the listeners, was when you say talent, I imagine it's kind of still a bit of the kind of talent in terms of like in front of the camera as an example, but also is that more or as much behind the camera and even sort of back end kind of talent that work in media? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, definitely. We
Yeah,
have been focusing on everything from graphic designers. So we recently partnered with Netflix to build a talent pipeline for them of graphic designers, but also financial analysts and production accountants to also roles outside of just media and entertainment. So we've been working with companies like Amazon and some other companies hopefully coming up that we can announce soon that are
yeah,
also just completely outside of media. So it's really looking at both. But we do still have a bit of a focus on in front of the camera, but more so focusing on behind.
It's not excluding that, but it's sort of beyond the talent, in the sense of like when we were talking about seeing talent was probably more performative or in front of camera, etc. So yeah, that makes sense. And in terms of the training, because you spoke about a platform, so does that mean quite a lot of sort of e-learning kind of way of facilitating the training?
Yeah, so we create education and training that is directly related to open roles,
Mhm.
and it's really focused on bridging specific skill gaps. So using Netflix as the example, they mentioned to us that they find a lot of great graphic design talent who know exactly what they're doing, but they've just never had the opportunity to work within the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
So the education and training that we build is very specific to Netflix. It's specific to the industry. So it's not teaching someone stuff that they already know or, a role from absolute scratch or nothing. It's really about giving disabled talent that leg up and that opportunity to stand out within the crowded talent pool, and also bridge specific knowledge gaps that they may not have had access to because of the social barriers that have existed or do exist within society.
Yeah. I mean, that resonates in a broader way, that whether it's product or a service or it's employment, actually like employment in the kind of being employed, or then freelance, self-employed, or whatever it might be, it's kind of bringing that both sides of the coin more together as well, isn't it?
It really is. And I think what we found too with some of the training that we have on the platform currently is a lot of talent, and the feedback that we got, talent that went through the graphic design course for Netflix, they were like, wow, it was really nice to hear from someone who works at Netflix who is disabled and hear about the accommodations that they were given by Netflix, what it might be like to work as a disabled person within this company. And also a lot of people who have come back to us and said, I would never have applied for this role if I didn't take this course, because I didn't realize or think that this would even be something that they would be open to, that they're even open for disabled people like me to go and be in that role. So it's kind of it's really awesome to see. So we're just really focusing on doing that at scale, and expanding that to other roles and industries.
Yeah, that's really clever and so cool. And it really jumps out that we all know there's been a lot going on under the hood, so to speak, at a lot of brands. So it's a nice way for them to actually sort of share and tell that story. There's a comedy element within it, but also there's a lot. What really jumped out is role modeling, that I've always said when I was aspiring to be a disabled entrepreneur or founder, there wasn't a whole lot of examples of people that just did it, that showed it was possible, but that could also speak to how they did it. And like you and I chatting today, I'm sure there's someone watching or listening that will take that hope and that confidence that it is possible because other disabled people have done it. And then in the training, it sounds like there's also a little bit more that the how to, in terms of like reasonable adjustments and that kind of stuff.
Definitely. And
Or workplace adjustments, as they're now known. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And something that we've been doing too on the platform is, one, recognizing that education has historically been very exclusive of disabled talent because of access, resources. So the education will always be free for talent on the platform. And then the other point being the access itself of the platform. So we are accessible beyond compliant. We have a really awesome button on the video player so you can turn on and off sign language. and various other accessibility options and functionalities too. So that's a big focus of ours.
Yeah, amazing. Cool. Well, I mean, I suppose for me, the last sentiment is the future. I mean, I think there's a lot set up by what you've, created with the platform and partnering with Sophie and working with Hello Sunshine, all the things you've already mentioned kind of frame where this is probably heading in a way. But yeah, like, have you got some sort of tangible view of, 5-10 years, what kind of goals you're chasing down at the moment?
Big question.
Yeah, there's a bit of it's easy to ask and hard to answer, right? But
very hard to
I mean,
answer.
anything future-wise you're kind of excited about and up to?
I think kind of within long term and near term, I'm excited about some of the work that we're doing around AI and disability, which is obviously top of mind, I think, for a lot of people. And I know a lot of people are maybe slightly worried about the future of AI, but personally, I'm excited about what it can do for and with the disabled community, as long as we are, as a community, at the helm of it and included and involved within these initial steps that's happening and the building of it. So I'm excited about what we're building with that, which should be started. Our first kind of version of what we have in mind should be released within the next month or so for talent to try out. And then also just even looking towards the Los Angeles 2028 Olympics and Paralympics, we're kind of looking at that as a milestone and as a date of which we can build around and leverage to get these massive brands and massive companies and even celebrities involved in what we're doing, and really utilizing the power of that. So yeah, lots of exciting things. I don't know how to, don't have a succinct answer at all. Just
No, I mean, there's a lot in flux in the world, right? And what jumped out to me there actually was social media had the potential, and depending who you speak to, in some cases, has had negative effects in the world, right? But also, as we said, it did actually give disabled people a voice. And I met people with the same disability as me all over the world. There's like Facebook groups, all that kind of stuff. So there would definitely, not to say like for some other places it's bad, for disabled people it's great. I think there are parts about social media that's not been good for disabled people as well. But overall, there were positives, I think, broadly speaking, to have come out of social media, that Web 2.0, as it's called. And I think your point about AI has that similar potential. And you mentioned Olympic Paralympic Games. So London 2012 was very pivotal, where there was a bit of a awareness of disability beyond some of those old typical tropes. It still bordered slightly on the sort of, triumph over tragedy a little bit. That's the narrative that's hard around Olympic and Paralympic to avoid anyway. But I think broadly speaking, it brought the Paralympics and therefore a lot of disability issues to the fore. So I think those 2 points, AI and the Los Angeles Olympic and Paralympic Games, definitely I can see present some big opportunities. And what they fall out in detail is yet to be determined by people like yourself, really.
Yeah, thank you. You said that so much better than I could. That was so well said. And honestly, I'm just really excited. And I hope we can get to this day where disabled people aren't and are no longer just fighting for basic human rights, and we can really start thinking about much bigger and broader conversations. So
agreed. Yeah, amazing. Was there anything else you wanted to share with the audience of plans and philosophical thoughts, or have you kind of shared everything you hoped to on today's episode?
I think so. I think the last thing I would mention is we do have a course going live on the platform imminently, hopefully within the next couple of weeks, with NBC. So certainly be on the lookout for that, leading to tangible job opportunities at actually the Paris Olympics and Paralympics.
Amazing. Yeah, because they're coming up this year as well, aren't they? So any particular links, send me after, and I'll put them in the notes so people can actually click on the relevant links as well. But yeah, really glad we got to catch up today. And there's so many more other things I think we could have gone through, but yeah, it was really lovely just to hear what you've been up to and where you are and where you're going. And please continue all the amazing impact and work you're doing in the sector.
Oh, thank you so much. Likewise.
Bye bye.